Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back, everyone. When you think about it, we're in a very unique time in our history where we have people working together that come from different generations, sometimes 3 generations, maybe more, all potentially working in the same place. How do you lead? How do you navigate? How do you motivate? How do you deal with conflict when you've got somebody who's 21, you've got somebody who's 71? Therein lies, I believe, a bit of a challenge. We're going to tackle that today. When we talk about different generations, I've got them for you. It's mother and daughter. Donnica Hawes Saunders and Ronita Hawes Saunders joins us on the program. Hello, ladies. How are you doing today?
Doing great, Steve. Hi.
Wonderful to have you here. Before we even start, you also have a podcast that you both do together. Donnica, what's the name of that podcast?
It is called Raised by Her.
I just love that name. It's so cool.
I like it too. We like it.
And it's wonderful that you both work together in that capacity. And we're talking about this here today. So, Ronita, I'm going to pose that question right to you. What are some of the biggest challenges here that you see when somebody, let's take it from the leader's standpoint. You have people of all different ages working with you in a company. What are some of the best practices, best ways to navigate that situation?
Thank you for that question, Steve. When I think of the various jobs, places that I've worked, and how I've had to learn to navigate different individuals in terms of my leadership experiences, what I really remember is that I was sort of caught off guard by the different work ethics that different generations seem to have. In the baby boomer generation, my parents really had a very, I believe, strong work ethic, morning, noon, and night. Get the job done. They worked generally 2 jobs, doing very well in terms of making sure that they had the work ethic, but being able to complete the task at hand was probably one of the life lessons that I learned very early on. Complete the task at hand. So that means you work as long as it takes. You spend the extra hour or 2 hours, even if it's after work hours, doing whatever it took to be able to accomplish the task. In many other generations, that's not the case. There is the need for the work-home balance scenario. There is a need for flexibility. There is a need for making sure that you're not overtaxing the individuals with too many projects at a given time. And as a manager, I became really, I was caught off guard when that occurred. I actually went to a workshop that was put on for CEOs, and that was the topic at hand: how to be able to manage different kinds of individuals in what was going to be coming into the future. And what one of the facilitators said is that if you have a work standard, you have to make sure that those employees, regardless of their age, that they understand what the standard is. If you have work values, make sure they understand what the values are, but also make sure that you have flexibility. And it's not always 9 to 5 or 8 to 6. There needs to be a lot of flexibility with the upcoming workforce. Also, if you have a standard of dress, the IBM banker suit kind of thing that was required years ago, that's not going to be acceptable in the work environment in the future. So I really had to adjust. And I think the other CEOs sitting in that room had to adjust. We had lots of discussion about how to be able to manage differently.
It truly is challenging because when you talk about baby boomer generation, that came from the work ethic. And I believe even before that, their parents, a place of scarcity. You know, you come from the 20s, depression, the 30s, where you're very careful about everything. You got to keep working hard, keep working hard. Now, fast forward now, Gen Z, Gen X, it's it's about life. It's about living a better life where if you're older, you're picking up on it. So, it's a big plus there. But there's different views of all of that. Donica, how are you seeing this today?
So it's so funny as I was listening to my mother kind of walk through her perspective. I was like, I've heard this before, and I fundamentally reject it. Um, which is fine. So I am a millennial, and I know that some of the stereotypes of millennials are that they are not hardworking, or that they are lazy, and that not only doesn't define me and my career, it doesn't define my peers. And so I think there's the first step in kind of moving forward is getting rid of the generalizations and getting rid of the stereotypes. Like look at each individual and see how are they contributing and how do they need to be led or managed to achieve the ultimate goals. When we talk about newer concepts to the workforce in terms of flexibility or work-life balance, to me, those aren't in counter to hard work. They are in addition to hard work. I actually had this conversation at a leadership program I was at a few weeks ago, and the question became, so Donica, you run a fully remote team. How do you ensure that the work gets done? And I was like, well, I know the work gets done because I see the work getting done. Like, it's here. There was like, so you don't, how are you tracking them? How are you making sure they're in front of their computers when they say they are? I don't, because I know the quality standard. They know the quality standard. If something's due at 9 a.m. on Monday, I know at 9:01 whether the work was complete or not. So I don't think that it's so counter to hard work versus flexibility and work-life balance. I think that the two go really naturally together. And when you lean into people's strengths, like working late night or working early mornings, I think that the work output is even better. I think statistically, actually, when the research came out of COVID with folks working remotely, you saw that the outputs for corporations well exceeded what had happened in the past.
Mm. I always respected any leader that said to me, I don't care when you do it, just get it done. Yes, because everybody has a different style. You have different things going on. Maybe you want to take a little bit of personal time, but then a Monday morning, it better be done because now we've crossed over into a different territory. Um, Certainly challenging in terms of time off, where it's got to be fair for everybody. And by the way, my eye opener for all of this was Google. I think it was 2012, where a lot of younger people working there, and you had a cafe, you had childcare, you had fitness facility, you had like free food, video games, pinball games in the lobby. What was wrong with that? I don't see anything wrong with that as long as the work gets done. Your thoughts, Renita?
Well, I understand that environment that you are talking about, and the workshop that I was referencing, and I'm trying to remember what date that had to be. Probably 30 years ago when I went to that particular workshop that was talking about the workforce in the future, and they absolutely talked about those kind of perks in
Wow.
the work environment, and we're sitting there thinking, are you kidding us? I mean, why would we want to have a daycare that exists within the work environment? What
Yeah, I'm
the
going to work to get rid of my kids. No, I'm kidding.
but they talked about motherhood, and they talked about the need to be able to connect with your child, especially when your child is young and a toddler. And so if the child was on the campus, then that would allow the person who was missing his or her child, actually not just the women, but the men, to be able to go and to interact with them. The cafes and all the things that you were talking about was discussed as well. In the discussion that the CEOs were having, we wanted to know if this is the way the workforce is going to be in the future, are we going to have to hire more people in order to accomplish the same task? Because when you're thinking about whether it's paid time off, or when you're thinking about that flexibility, usually you have to have some folks on site to be able to accomplish the task at hand. To Donnica's point, that this is the way of the world today, and there needs to be balance. I wasn't talking about not having a balance. I was talking about getting the job done. What I've learned now, having to manage intergenerational employees, is the fact that there's really good synergy when you bring folks together and you let them work out what's best for them in terms of their teams. And what I'm talking about, Steve, is being able to respect the ideas and the expertise of the older generation, but being open to learn from the younger generation, being able to embrace technology in a way that is necessary, and not to put, to Donnica's point, not to put labels on individuals. It's not the fact that people are lazy, they just work differently.
If you were to look back at your career, maybe with an eye on now in terms of different values in the workplace, what might you have done, for you personally, what might you have done differently?
I believe that I would have, that's funny, I think I would have hired differently in some positions, because I really believe that based on how you're raised in your value system, then you understand not so much the work ethic here in this conversation, but you understand customer service differently. And so where I had some of the largest challenges is in my sales teams, making sure that there was synergy there. We had a staff meeting with the sales team every morning. Every morning you came in and you had to be there at a certain time to go through what the schedule was for the day, how many clients you're going to see, in this case, how many advertisers. It was just and that was a part of the routine. Well, the older workers adjusted to that particular rule regulation within the workplace. The younger generation did not, and there was always some challenging conflicts, especially the managers had to handle there. I also managed very creative on-air talent and personalities, and so I had a certain standard and ethic when it came to how you looked within the environment, within the work environment. But it was an urban formatted radio station, so the guys wanted to wear jeans and t-shirts. Okay, that's fine, but I don't need t-shirts that have your own personal saying or some statement that you're trying to make, because when I'm bringing clients, customers, advertisers through the station, I want them to see on a t-shirt something that I think is at least respectful. So, but I think to your question, what I would do differently is I would make sure that my different generations were working closer together to understand why we had the rules and regulations that we had.
I guess it might be tough too, because now you have different generations, like style of dress. Somebody might figure, I think now that we're out of COVID, it kind of equalized a lot of us in terms of working remote, what we wear to work. Doesn't need to be that formal. We don't have to do that anymore. I'm thinking about all of this. I personally, I look back, I regret not taking all my vacation time. Whether it's 4 weeks, I would take 3, leave one on the table. And it was part of, like, I want to look valuable back then. Now I look at it as like, I earned that. I should have taken every second of that time. But I wasn't in that mindset of more of what we're in now. I take everything I can now. Donnica, how about you? Would you change anything? Do you have your eye on anything?
So as a consistent learner, I probably change things frequently without even really recognizing it, as I am trying to continuously be responsible or responsive to my team, the company, our clients, as well as myself. If I had to pinpoint one thing that I think has been really important with all these changes, in one thing that's really important in being consistent with, would be the rules and regulations and the expectations. And that very much goes to my to my personality, but also to our general consensus of point. It matters in terms of the work. Like the ultimate goal is to get the best work done for your clients or the people that you're serving. And so being able to maintain that standard of excellence has been really, really beneficial for me. But it's also, since that is the North Star, it's given me more flexibility, I think, in terms of how people dress. Now, you have to look appropriate. You have to look like you have to look like a lot. You can't show up in jeans and things like that. But or I mean, actually, you can depending on what the circumstances are. But I mean, if the goal is the work and the goal is excellence, again, it just some of these other things that I think have been really, really important in the past. It makes you wonder why. Makes me wonder why.
Well, and to that point, later I became the CEO of a world-class modern contemporary dance company. And that environment was totally different because I had the very creative, very talented dancers who could wear leotards and whatever to studio because they were coming there to learn their dance routines and to work. Now the office staff, because again, we were dealing with donors and we're dealing with business people and we're dealing with the board, I would want to have a certain kind of environment, but the artists that were working in the office environment, Steve, did not want to have any kind of different attire than their dancers that they had been working with early in the morning or late at night. And so there was just being able, I think, to have some flexibility, but also to understand both sides. And I'm not sure we do a good job, those of us in leadership do a good job of communicating both sides to the total team. Then you wouldn't have that much resistance, I think, to understanding attire and why that might be important in a work environment.
Great point. And I think it's universal to not just multi-generational workforces, but in general, the expectations clearly defined. I bet you if you go into 50 businesses right now and pick a random employee, what does your company stand for? What is your value statement? What are you guys all about? Oh, it's more about making money. Okay. That's not what we're talking about. Go deeper in that. Broad question, big question here. How do you make it fair for everyone? Somebody presents a situation. If you allow them to do it, let's say a personal one, what if the other employees bring up something in a similar situation? How do you set that tone? Donica,
Great.
Renita,
Oh, sorry. Well,
either one.
You go
well,
first.
it's a great HR kind of question. And I've had those kinds of circumstances. And the fact of the matter is what you do one, then you have to be able to make sure there's flexibility there to be able to offer that same kind of opportunity. That's where the personal days became, I think, more popular, where it used to be vacation time. And then they started having personal time off so that there could be some flexibility there in terms of the rules, the regulations, and exactly what was expected and what was necessary in a society where you are having the kind of participation of fathers within the work environment. What came to mind immediately when you said that was the maternity leave that women used to get. Fathers didn't get that. But if you look at what the rules are today, there is time off that fathers are able to apply for or request. I don't know if they need as much time, but in that kind of environment. So you really have to look at what's equitable and how flexible you can be. But back to that point I made earlier, you also may need to have more people available so that you can cover the shifts that need to be addressed when you want the work done.
Donica, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point, it's pretty industry specific. As it pertains to the work that I do, The rule, the rules are the rules. Now, where that has come into play, because companies are made up of people and people have their own lives, and there's all these types of things that people are dealing with on an ongoing basis, some of which you know, probably a lot of which you don't know. And so even if there is a rule, I think a part of your question is, well, what happens when somebody has maybe like a really good excuse? um, I think that when that occurs, the communication piece that we mentioned earlier is what really, really is key. Okay, you're showing you can't show up for whatever reason. Is the work that you need to be done covered by others on your team? Have you done that legwork? Have you communicated with others about what else is going on? Just making sure that even if for whatever reason you cannot be available, that the work still gets done. And that's the responsibility from my perspective on the person. And then I think that goes even deeper into work relationships and who can I call. We now have all these beautiful communication channels. You can Slack somebody, you can text somebody, you can call somebody, you can leave a voice message to somebody. I mean, there's, from my perspective, I don't know that there's any excuse not to have excellent communication within a company. It gets more and more challenging the bigger a company is, particularly when you go global, and then there's cultural differences and things like that. But certainly for smaller organizations and even for intergenerational organizations, I think that communication really is the key. And then it is on the part of leadership to make sure that everybody has both access and some training on the various styles of communication.
Have you ever had to change the rules based on one person and then it became universal? Let's say somebody called up and they had an issue, and then you thought, well, wait, all right, well, now, all right, we have to revisit this. We have to change around. Or are these the safeguards in place where, all right, well, that comes into the category of personal time. You can do whatever you want with it, but Jen in that department or Mike over here, they have the same. They can do whatever they want with their personal time. Have you ever had to change it along the way in recent time?
I can't think of a particular circumstance right now that has been the case. I can think of a circumstance in the past where someone has become ill, seriously ill, and they had to take extended time off, and their spouse wanted to know, will her job be protected? Well, this was a unique situation. This was not something that we had addressed before. So what I did is I actually went to our employment attorney and asked the question, how do I not change the rules for everybody, but how do I make sure that this particular person's job could be protected, assuming that the illness is something that would be at some point cured and they could come back. And what he suggested was to take the look at the rule for veterans, because within the work environment, especially a large environment, if you are not veterans, I'm sorry, military, if the Ohio Guard was called off and they had to take time off work, their job has to be there when they come back from the service that they have been required to have. And so we used that kind of language to be able to recreate the employee handbook if someone had serious illness.
That's a really great point.
I
Yeah.
was going to say, my default is always the law, and I know that employment law has evolved and changed over time and continues to do so. But I think for folks that are listening and have these types of questions, it's really good to start your baseline with what does the law say?
Yeah. That being said, I'm going to throw it out there. Instant feedback, steve@gmail.com. I love input on everything multi-general workplace, workforce that we're talking about today. Would love thoughts, comments, questions. Tell us about your podcast. It's fantastic. People are talking about it. Give me some more info.
Raised by Her is a conversation that we have on a weekly basis that is very similar to the one we just had. And you heard the different perspectives from a millennial, from somebody from the boomer generation. We talk about work. We talk about our personal lives. We talk about health. We talk about relationships between women, period, whether it's within families or within friendships. We cover it all. But we do so through the lens of a mother-daughter relationship, and through the lens of our very somewhat similar, but also very different lived experiences based on the different generations we were born in.
Final question, and I don't even know if anybody would, I don't know the answer, but I wonder if you went back in the day, you went back 50 years, whatever, and we were talking about the same things that they were talking about it then that we're talking about it now, where then you had younger people working, you had older people work. Do you think the conversation would be the same?
I think it would be the same in terms of what we can learn from each other. Because if you look at where some of your life lessons really come from, it came from those who were older and wiser, if you were open to it. If you go back to the days
Notice she
when
said wiser. I'm just going to leave that one. Don't put graphic lower third up.
Well, yeah, because I think that hopefully, not all the time, but hopefully with age comes some wisdom and experience. And I think that if you can respect the fact that whoever the other individual is in the work environment has been through some things, whatever those things are, and they are still here working, they're working for a reason. Maybe they love the job. Maybe they're just really good at it. Maybe they need the job. So then the younger person comes on, and maybe this is just merely a stepping stone for them, but there is still something that the younger person can learn from that older person. And I think that's where these multi-generational opportunities are really good for organizations, for teams. It's really good for companies.
And kind of exciting too, because if somebody's older, it doesn't mean they can't learn from that younger person and, all cohabitate together.
I'm learning from my daughter. I'm learning from my daughter. I am, and I've been working for a long time.
Yes, same here. And I love working with younger people. It's almost like a passion because I love the passion there. That
It's energizing.
Yes, fresh,
Right?
yeah, different perspective. And you both are here. Thank you so much for today. Really interesting conversation. You don't hear it that much, and especially between a mother and daughter. Really appreciate it. We'll catch up next time.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.